Welcome to Everything is Everything. I'm Amit and this is my good friend Ajay. Behind the camera we have Vaishnav who taught me a new phrase today with reference to Ajay. And that phrase is Samaji Titli mein bhavra. Let me translate it for you because as you saw in the last episode, I am pretty good at translations. It means among the social butterflies, there is a bumblebee. And just before this, we were talking about your delightful shirts. But not just your delightful shirts, but your romantic nature. Because this is something not many people may know about you. And we mean romantic not in a pyar vyar romance kind of sense, but in the grander sense that this is a man who brings poetry to economics. So what do you have to say about this? Are you a Samaji Titli mein bhavra? Are you the bumblebee among butterflies? Are you the romantic among the mundane fools? Are you the poet among the economists? These allegations have been hurled on you. And in the court of YouTube opinion, Ajay Shah, you must defend yourself or confess.
First, you have to kill the joke by explaining it. I didn't understand the relationship between a bumblebee and butterflies.
It means there are social butterflies who are shallow and vain and etc. etc. And you are a man of substance and poetry. You are the bumblebee among the butterflies. And typically we all think of butterflies as good and bumblebees as not so good. So Mr. Vaishnav Vyas, I don't know where this muhavra comes from, but you get the idea. This is a compliment.
I will lay claim to one thing. Okay, every economist reads Milton Friedman, John Maynard Keynes, Robert Lucas, okay, and so on. But I love their language. I study them for language. I study Keynes for language as much as I study Hemingway for language. So that is the difference between me and a normal economist.
As a great Govinda would say, Sarkari khatiya private karo. Okay, end of chapter.
Okay, brief moment of terror. Like, what the fuck was that?
He has a song called Sarkailo Khatiya Jara Karo, something like that. Sarkailo Khatiya Jara Karo. So my translation of
Sarkailo khatiya jada lage. Jada is winter.
yeah. So Sarkailo Khatiya Jara Lage, which I've translated to Sarkari Khatiya Private Karo.
So, gentle reader, we are on the lofty business of starting a business. Okay, in the previous episode, we had done an argument that even if you think that you're going to be in a day job for the rest of your life, even if you're going to be a banker, that there is merit in kicking yourself and thinking, let's start a business. It's something all of us should think more about. And then we had gotten started on a bunch of knowledge and insight about the process of building a business and what it takes and how to approach it and what is the appropriate stance that each of us needs to bring to these kinds of projects. And the cruel constraints of time had interrupted us last time. Amit, take us further.
The cruel constraints of time, and last week we had actually reached the point where you actually start, ending with the bias for action. We had briefly discussed to quickly do a summary of where we got so far, and please watch the episode. We're very happy with it, especially the poetry and the songwriting at the start. But just watch the episode, and we've spoken about how it is important to be inward driven. And in a sense, I will contradict that in this episode, or rather lay out another aspect of it, but be driven from inside, that you have to begin with something that you're interested in. It can start as a project, which can then become a product, which can then become a business. And it's important to focus on getting a few people to love your product rather than like your product. We spoke about that at some length. We spoke about how you must not listen to naysayers. The world is full of naysayers, but you've got to follow your heart and do what needs to be done. We had a brief we stated a disagreement about how much involvement is required. You said one can have a detached mentality, as one should, towards life and its outcomes. But my contention was that no, you need to go all in for a business, full passion, full commitment. That, gentle readers, you can decide and have your say in the comments as well. And finally, we spoke about the necessity of a bias for action.
Just tell me pretty lines again. You said it should start as a passion and then it should become a project, and then tell me those lines again.
I'll actually come to that when I come to my first point. And my first point of today is this: be a generalist. right? There's a great video by Sam Altman, we'll link it here. And Sam Altman says that in all the early stages that take you to actually starting a business, it is good to be a specialist, right? So the map, the sort of map that I delineated for you a moment ago was you start with a project, right? And that becomes a product. And then that becomes a business. So at the phase when it is a project, you can be a specialist. You are just driven by that. Larry Page and Sergey Brin are making a page rank mechanism to do search better. It is a project, then it becomes a product, and then it becomes a company. And Altman's point is that at that moment when you make a transition to being the founder of a company, you have to be a generalist. You can no longer be a specialist who knows only one thing well. At that point, you got to take a step back and you got to look at the world around you. You know, what do they know of England who only England knows, said Rudyard Kipling. What do they know of cricket who only cricket knows, said C.L.R. James. And you and I agree. You can replace that with anything. What do they know of X who only X know? Right? So this is an important piece of advice that, yeah, you start with a passion, you get deep into something. As you get deep into something, because of that passion, you're a specialist. But once you reach that stage where you say that, okay, I've built something awesome, a few people love this, it can scale now, and I'm going to start a company and I'm going to get the job done. At that point, it is no longer enough to focus on just that one area of expertise. You have to take that step back and think broader.
Yeah. So early on, the slogan inside Google was not that we will become the world's best search engine. It was, we will organize the world's information, which is sky high in terms of its level of ambition. And then suddenly you're willing to look at all kinds of adjacencies. So if you define yourself narrowly, then it is limiting. Here, I want to call out the problem of venture financing. So very often I've seen that the venture capitalists believe that it is their job to keep your nose in the straight and narrow. So they believe that we green lighted this kind of project, now you don't go jumping here and there. So I think it's important to always challenge the boundaries in terms of what the project is trying to do and not be too narrow in terms of what was there in your last pitch deck. I have a interesting one-liner to offer, which has absolutely nothing to do with this episode, but it is just too much fun. Okay, so every great idea starts out as a cause and then becomes a movement and then becomes a racket.
That's a brilliant line. And in the last episode, we quoted Vinod Khosla saying exactly what you're saying. That 70%, and this is one of the greatest venture capitalists of all time, saying that 70% of venture capitalists actually add negative value. They make things worse. Because they are coming with their bookish knowledge, which they've got from their MBA and blah, blah, and consulting, which is even more toxic sometimes. And then they come to it and they don't understand the day-to-day challenges of a particular business and what's going on, and they'll give advice and they'll actually make things worse. So that's dead right. And that increases the responsibility on the founder to actually be a generalist himself. So whatever subject that he is trying to figure out, he doesn't have to rely on others, rely on consultants, rely on the VC, rely on the person in your board who the VC has put in to give you that advice. But you've done your own study, you've gone down your own rabbit hole, and it's important to kind of think in those broader terms.
But I want to come back to something where we were earlier. In the previous episode, we said, even if you think you're a banker, you're a corporate slave, it's important to think of being a business. And building a business will make you a better employee. And I feel this is an interesting place to see that distinction. At the highest levels of every firm is a strategic view, where you're actually thinking for the long term and you're thinking in an entrepreneurial way, where you look at the world and wonder, who are we? What are our capabilities? What amazing things can we do that the world will like? Okay, that's strategy. That is the highest level thinking. The most important thinking of every firm is the strategy. And then out of that, you translate marching orders for a whole bunch of divisions and they go do execution. So when you're an employee, you're being told to shut up, be narrow, execute, execute, execute. But at the leadership level, it's upside down. You can't have an execution orientation as a leadership person. As a leadership person, you have to be constantly wondering, evaluating, re-evaluating, changing your mind about who are we, what is a unique thing that we know how to do, how can we serve the world better. It will never follow on a narrow track. And again, that's the distinction between leadership and employee. But as the leadership of a startup, you have to constantly worry about these things. Okay, Amit, take us forward.
My next tip is practice first principles thinking. Now, there's a great video of Elon Musk which gives a good illustration of this, where he talks about how he thinks about battery packs back in the day. Now, in a much earlier episode, you had kind of spoken about respect the experts and, don't try to think for yourself in certain fields which are really complicated. And thankfully, people like Musk don't think like that at all, right? All the experts said that batteries cannot be any cheaper. You have market forces at work, you have the best scientists in the world, we've made batteries as cheap as they can, you can make incremental improvements, but that's it. But what Musk did was that he got down to first principles thinking and he said, okay, here's a battery. What are the material constituents? These are the material constituents. This is how much of them is being used in each battery. In the spot market, if I buy them in the spot market or in London or wherever the spot markets are, how much do they cost? How much does it cost to put them together, etc., etc. And by doing this, he figured out that the conventional thinking was BS, and he cut down the cost of batteries at that time when his interview was taken from $600 per kilowatt hour to $80 per kilowatt hour, right? And a pretty radical change. And Musk has done that kind of thinking across many dimensions when it comes to, for example, what he's done at SpaceX and so on. But the point is not about Musk or what one may feel about him. The point is that all progress happens because someone challenged the conventional thinking, and on some margin the conventional thinking was wrong. Maybe it was wrong because it took a limited view of the world. Maybe it was right once, but the world changed and the conventional thinking remained the same. There is always a lag between, our picture of the world catching up with the world. So the important thing here is that whatever you're trying to do, don't make assumptions, about what the world is like, but instead challenge the conventional thinking and go back down to first principles. So that's my second piece of advice.
Yes, Amit, carry us further.
My next point is that focus on the customer. Now, in the last episode, we said that be inward driven, right? So when you are at that early stage of deciding what to do, you need to be inward driven. It has to be something you're passionate about. It has to be something that's authentic to you. It has to be a rabbit hole you would enter anyway, even if you weren't starting a business. And many businesses start like that. It's a project, it's a product, it's this thing. That's a great way to start. You're driven from the inside. You're not thinking in a world where cars don't exist. You're not thinking, what does the market want? The market will want better horses. Instead, you're thinking about what fascinates me, what excites me, and you're going out there and doing that. But once you have started the business, the customer matters, and there is a danger of, not noticing the customer enough, and sometimes noticing competitors more. Like, one great piece of wisdom from Jeff Bezos is that very early on, I decided to focus on customers and not competitors. I don't give a damn what other companies in this space are doing. I am focused on the customer. What does the customer want? How can I deliver that to her? On a separate side note, Bezos once said that, I don't think about how the world will change. I think about how it will remain the same. I know that 10 years later or 20 years later, people will still want lower prices, better value, faster delivery. If that is all I focus on today, I'm fine, which is, one way of thinking. And of course, there's wisdom to the contrary of how you have to focus on the change. And I'll come back to that later in this episode. But to come back to this point, focus on the customer. And there's a great video by Arvind Srinivas. And again, many of these videos, gentle readers, are from Startup Archive, a great account I follow on Instagram. So whatever I talk about, we'll link it from the show notes. So Arvind Srinivas of Perplexity talks about a realization that came to him when he watched a Larry Page interview. Larry Page had made the PageRank technology, right? And he took it to Excite. Excite, as people of our vintage will remember, Ajay Shah, though younger people may not have heard of it, used to be a search engine. So you had Yahoo, Excite, Ask Jeeves, you had a bunch of such search engines in the late 1990s, mid to late 1990s. So Larry Page went to the Excite team and he said, look, I'm going to give you a demo to show how my technology can help your product. He was trying to sell the PageRank technology to Excite. And he booted up a page with Excite, and he booted up a page which was using the PageRank technology, Google, I don't know if it was called that then, but using his tech. And he said, see what happens when I search for university. When he searched for university in Google, it came up with Harvard, Stanford, all the top universities. When he put university in Excite, it came up with all the random bunch of shit. No page rank being used. It just came up with whatever, completely random things of no value to anyone. And Page said, see, this is what our page rank is doing. That it's more likely to give the user what she is looking for. And at that point, the Excite executive said, no, you don't understand. Nobody types in university. That's a terrible way to search. If the person had written what is the best Ivy League university in America, then see Harvard and Stanford are coming up. And Page's response to that was that, no, you can't do that. You're gaslighting the user. You're saying the user is stupid. The user is not searching properly. The problem is not with the user. The problem is with you. You have to cater to the user. The user is always right. The customer is always right. And Srinivas's learning from this is something that he took into Perplexity, which is an awesome AI app. I use it all the time. And the example he gives is that, look, my mother searched for something, and then she came to me and she said, ki, beta, look, I'm not getting the result I want. And his first response was to say that, no, you have to phrase the question properly. Look at the grammar of your question. No wonder this thing got confused. But he stopped himself from saying that. When he realized it's not my mother's fault, it's my fault. You got to give the user what they want. You got to be focused on that. And this is an important lesson, because often what will happen is we will get carried away by the Kool-Aid of what we are doing. We'll be like, I made such an awesome product, and oh, Ajay doesn't like it. Ajay doesn't get it, man. This is bullshit. Ajay is just, he's this, he's that. He's a Samaji Titli and not a Bhavra.
He's a Unix command line user.
He's a Unix command line user. Yeah. This is hypothetical. I'm not saying this about the Unix command line user is a compliment, right? So it's a feature, not a bug. So the important thing is, therefore, that you be focused on the customer. Don't blame the customer. And there is a sort of a continuation of this from a great piece of advice that doesn't actually seem related. It came from Gary Tan, where he said that when you are small, act small, right? And the orthogonal point he was making is that some small companies will act as if they're big companies. They'll do isomorphic mimicries of the practice of the best companies. So if you've got a small software startup, you'll have a front page like Microsoft, and everything will be designed like that, because you think that that helps your brand, that you look like a big brand and you do big things. And Tan's great point is that don't do that. That's a disaster. If you're small, act small, because then when you act small, you can get closer to the customer. Be authentic to that. In our last episode, we spoke about Airbnb and Brian Chesky, how he would go and meet his early users and say, okay, how can we help you? What do you need? How can I make it better? So similarly, if you're small, and Tan in his earlier company, the startup that he ran before he went to Y Combinator, Tan said that he and his team would answer emails personally. One day of the week, it would be his duty, the CEO. It would be the CEO's duty to sit down and answer every customer complaint himself. The idea being that you are small, it's okay to act small. You've got 100 customers, 200 customers, whatever. Speak to them. And, you don't have to act big. You don't have to have that distance from them. And when you're small, you have the luxury of doing this, that you can speak to every customer. When you're bigger, you can't do this. So it is actually, in a sense, being smallness is a luxury that allows you to get that intimacy with your customer and build an incredible product.
Yes, Amit, carry us further.
My next point is one that is close to my heart. Don't obsess with marketing. Right? There's a great quote I love by Kevin Hale of Y Combinator. And the quote is, marketing is a tax you pay for not making your product awesome. Right? Why do you need to do marketing? You need to do marketing because your product is not so mind-blowing that it's making waves in the world already. And this is what I often say, I mean, this is not what I often say, but I spout this philosophy when people come to me and say, hey, why don't you do marketing? Why don't you do little clips of your show and put it as YouTube shorts or put it as Instagram? And why don't you spend more time doing that? And my point always has been, and I used to say this with reference to the seen and the unseen, and I think I've been proved right over time, that a good product is the best marketing. That my early sort of focus was, I will build the best product possible and it will find its way in the world and it will find its users. And I made that the best that I could, put all my heart and soul into that instead of thinking about marketing, right? And here's what happens when you build something good these days in modern times. It spreads by word of mouth. You know, Jeff Bezos has a great video where he talks about how the focus in his lifetime has shifted completely from marketing to product. You build a great product, the people will come. That's really all that you need to do. And this is something I kind of believe viscerally. Like sometimes I think that I take it to the other purest extreme, that I don't do any marketing at all and I don't really care. But I believe that ultimately you build it and they will come. And you don't really need to go that far. Your tribe will eventually find you. If I had a different approach, I think there is some optimal line. Like I do 100% product, 0% marketing. I think there is some optimal line where if I did 5% or 10% marketing, I'd probably have more of my tribe finding me and a little bit more of a user base. But whatever that optimal line is, I don't want to take away from my bandwidth to discover what that is. You know, I have limited energy, I have limited cognitive capacity. Focus all of it on the product. And the reason this is important is not to say that marketing is bad and don't do marketing. The reason this is important is that once you get a marketing orientation, there is a danger that it takes over your thinking. Because then you're marketing and then you're thinking about what will attract other people. And then instead of being inward focus, you let the expectations of the world come in and you might start playing to the lowest common denominator or doing what is easy in the short term and will get you short-term gratification rather than focusing on building something great for the long term. And all great entrepreneurs are building something great for the long term. We'll elaborate on that as well. And so that's something that is important to note. And this applies not just to brands, but also to individuals, right? There's a great quote by Naval Ravikant where he says, networking is overrated. Do something great and your network will instantly emerge. And networking is personal marketing, right? You're going to a trade fair or you're going to a conference and you're handing out your visiting cards, those who still have those antiquated pieces of paper. And, you're increasing your surface area of serendipity, which is a good thing. We spoke about it earlier, but how far do you want to take it? And his point is that, hey, don't worry about networking. Don't worry about going up to people, hi, I'm so and so, I'm working on this. Don't worry about that shit. Just do great things and people will form around you. And I have also found this sort of in my journey, the kind of wonderful people I've met and come to know and interact with, and creators I talk with all the time, because of the seen and the unseen, and now to some extent everything is mind-blowing. And I didn't go to any conferences or trade fairs. I didn't hang out with other influencers at those gatherings. I just did my work, and you do your work and people find you. So again, if you're watching this, I would say that we focus too much on marketing. Too many people who want to start a business will come to me and say that, I've started a newsletter, how do I build a readership? How do I reach people? What is my discoverability, etc., etc. And I'm like, you're worried about the wrong thing. First, make it awesome. Make that your sole focus and everything will work out.
Yes, Amit, let's go further.
Let's go further. And this one will again gladden your heart, right? This piece of advice is choose a mission bigger than yourself. And you alluded to this in the context of Google earlier, organizing the world's information. A great example I love comes from Jeff Bezos, where he talks about something he read in the 1980s that really inspired him. He was reading about Akio Morita and Sony. And when Akio Morita started Sony, this is how he defined the mission of Sony. He said, our mission is to make Japan known for quality again. Right? Our mission is not to sell more electronics, sell Walkman, sell the blah, to make Japan known for quality again. Patrick Collison has an interview where he speaks about the mission for Stripe when Stripe first started. And he said that our mission is to increase the GDP of the internet. right? The mission, again, bigger than himself, bigger than the company. I love the story that Simon Sinek tells about Nike and Phil Knight. That Sinek was, I think, in the audience at this conference where Phil Knight of Nike was giving a speech. And Phil Knight at one point says that, all of you who run for exercise once in a while, please stand up. So most of the room stands up. Then he says that all of you who run at least once a week, keep standing. The rest of you sit down. So a few people sit down, many people are still standing. Then he says, all of you who run at least a couple of times a week, keep standing, the rest of you sit down. So now a lot of the room has sat down. Then he says, all of you who run at least 3 times a week and who are anal about it, who will do it whether it's rain or shine or they feel good or they feel bad, they will just go out and do it, keep standing. So now most of the room is sitting down, just a handful of people are standing up. And he says that the next time that you are out there before dawn, running in the darkness, and it's wet and you're feeling miserable and you're still running, if there's a guy under the lamppost who is cheering you on, that's us. And the point that Knight was making, the point that moves Sinek so much and moves me so much, is that just do it is not about winning. It is about doing. Right? And imagine, Nike taking this kind of brand positioning. That we are with you when you try, we are with you when you do. We don't care if you win or not. We are with you when you do. Just do it. That kind of spirit of perseverance. And then the story of the brand is no longer about I want to sell you shoes, I want to sell you cool sneakers, and etc. etc. The story is something else. The story has something to do with your personality, your dreams, and who you are. So again, you're creating a story for your brand or for yourself or for your company, which is bigger than the whole. And this is mind-blowing. Another company that does exactly this is NVIDIA. Where Jensen Huang has spoken about how he was not looking to win the market, but he was looking to create new markets. He was not looking to be a big fish in the small pond that he was in, but he was looking at increasing the size of the pond, making it a lake or whatever. I mean, I don't think he used exactly those terms, but that's the idea, that you're thinking bigger than yourself. It is not that mere neighborhood mein there aren't enough pizzas, I will start a pizza company and I will give them pizzas. That's a very narrow focus. It is not even an inspiring focus. How can you wake up every morning looking forward to the day and going out there full of energy if your focus is like that? But if your focus is bigger than yourself, it's something that can then animate you and keep you animated.
There are two parts to this. It's about the communication of the brand to the consumer. So if you paint yourself as somebody that will sell shoes to the user, it's one kind of positioning. But if you can get to something more elevating in the minds of the consumer, that's a great place to be. But equally in the modern world, it has to do with the recruitment. The firms that position themselves as narrow bean counters get more normal, more average persons as their employees. Whereas the firms that go after big, audacious dreams are more likely to get remarkable people joining.
And this is a point I'll come to later, but this is exactly what Steve Jobs would have said about Apple at the start. Like, Apple didn't just want to make good computers. They wanted to make beautiful computers. They wanted elegance, simplicity, beauty. And because these were their values, they attracted that caliber of people who wanted to do this. They attracted not the best product designers, but the best designers, the best artists, the best thinkers. So, hugely important. Agree with you entirely.
Amit, take us forward.
So my next point is, and again, you will like this point because you play the long game. Which game do you play, Ajay Shah?
The 100-year game.
Why can't you just repeat what I said? There's a nice poetry to it. I'll try again. You play the long game. Which game do you play, Ajay Shah?
The long game.
That's how I like it. You're following instructions. So let's go. So my next piece of advice to anyone who wants to start a business is think long term, right? And there's a great quote by Sam Altman I love, where he says, a long term commitment is the only arbitrage opportunity left in the market. right? Because most people are thinking of the next quarter, how do I increase sales by 2026 and blah, blah, blah. And you're too short-term focused. And if you have shareholders or if you have venture capitalists or whatever, everybody is also looking at that. And he's like, your competitive advantage is that you're thinking for the long term. Because what happens when you think for the long term is that you have a different kind of vision. It is usually a more inspiring vision, and it attracts a different kind of person. And that different kind of person is someone who is more likely to achieve greatness. You know, earlier you spoke about how you don't want to be in a company where the focus of the senior management is on execution, 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 right? And this speaks exactly to that. That if you are thinking long term, then it's not just about execution, it's about strategy, it's about what is my vision. You know, Jeff Bezos has this great video where he says why it's important to make a business plan. And his point is not that a business plan is worth anything. Most business plans are rubbish. They are BS. You know, the best plans, go to hell once a fighting starts. Mike Tyson has this quote about how, what's that quote? You remember that quote? You're a boxing
Everyone
fan.
has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Until they get punched in the face. So Bezos's point is, and Bezos said that for Amazon, we did a 30-page business plan, which we took to investors. And he said, I knew it was BS. In the sense that I knew it would fall apart at contact with reality. So did the VCs. But that exercise of writing 30 pages is important because it clarifies your thinking. You are not thinking of something immediate and short term. You're writing 30 pages of something. You are looking into the future. It clarifies your thinking. A lot of things sort themselves out in your head by doing this. And that's why it's important to do this, right? There's another great quote I love where Vinod Khosla says, be obstinate about your vision, but flexible about your tactics, right? Your vision is a long-term thing. You know, make Japan known for quality again, organize the world's information, increase the GDP of the internet. That's a vision. How do you get there? Tactically, every single day you should be prepared to change when you come in contact with reality. There's a great quote by Brian Armstrong, which we cited in the last episode. Action produces information. Keep doing stuff. New information will come. You adjust your behavior according to that. Don't lose sight of the vision. The vision is why you exist. It is what matters. But tactically, you can do many different things while you make that journey. Eric Schmidt also said that make 5-year plans. Now, you and I, Ajay Shah, are not quite fans of 5-year plans in an Indian economy context. We have seen how disastrous our 5-year plans were, but they were disastrous because an economy can't be centrally planned. So that's why everything went to hell. But companies can, and the advantage of doing a 5-year plan is that you're having that strategic vision. And you're thinking about, okay, what will the world look like in 5 years? What will the world look like in 10 years? That, oh, I am doing this now, but this won't last for very long. AI will replace it, automation will replace it, and etc., etc. Where do I need to pivot? And the key part of that is not that you're putting something down on paper, because that doesn't really matter. The key part of that is A, the thinking that you have to put in when you write something like that, and B, it is a long-term orientation. The only game worth playing, Ajay Shah, is a long-term game.
I want to say two things here. I have met many senior managers who engage in exhortations around long-term thinking. But there is an inconsistency between this kind of talk versus the reality of how the HR department works. So when HR is giving out bonuses based on short-term performance, if the contract between the firm and the employee is narrow-minded, it prioritizes execution, it narrowly defines responsibilities, it quantifies performance, and it looks on a 1 quarter or 1 year horizon asking for results, and it awards bonuses and pay raises based on that performance, then you've got a fundamental inconsistency that, but the HR is telling me that I should just shut up and execute, I should be narrow-minded, I'm going to be judged for these narrow KPIs. Then why will I think in a bigger way? Why will I take more risks? Why will I be more entrepreneurial? Why will I be more long-term? So I would urge everybody to rethink HR, that if you think your people are very short-sighted, it's your fault. It's because of the nature of contracts that you've been given them. The second thing that I want to bring here is what you said, 5-year plans, okay? 10-year plans. I find it very useful when I do conversations into the world of business on how to address this problem of short term versus long term. Okay, the bane of India is short term thinking. People have just lost the ability to play for the long term, to think of something bigger. If you get a 14% nominal growth per year for 5 years, that's a doubling. Okay, so think 2x in 5 years, 5x in 5 years, 5x in 10 years, 10x in 10 years. Okay, these kinds of numbers are all exciting to people who have a simple commercial view of the world. Okay, like, look, I'm here, I want to make my market cap 10x in 10 years. Okay, that's exciting. It motivates every normal person saying, wow, you think my market cap can be 10x in 10 years? And then suddenly you're off to the races with doing a little bit of long-term thinking. Now you're starting to think that, oh, what does 10 years look like? Also, what does a firm with a 10x bigger operating profit look like? So if you're playing for 1 quarter or 1 year, you have a temptation of holding fixed costs constant and squeezing out a little more juice of the PAT. If you think 5 years, a doubling, or 5 years and 5x, and once you start taking that 5-year story or 10-year story more seriously, you'll also commission some of the initiatives that will lay the foundations of a better firm, of a bigger firm, a firm that is actually able to cope with that bigger organization. Otherwise, we are perennially in the process that we squeeze out a somewhat higher output from the existing capabilities of the firm, and then you choke because actually you have not nurtured the foundations of growth.
Let me ask you a question. First of all, recommendation, we have a bunch of episodes on firms. Please check them out. And in one of those episodes, the family firms episode, you spoke about the importance of having a board of directors who will actually be independent and why that is so important. Now, you are on the board of many big companies and an advisor to many big companies and so on and so forth. And it is natural that all of the advice I've given so far and will go on to give is something that startup entrepreneurs can find relatively easy to internalize. But within a big company, it's much harder. Like, my impression of a big company is that the bigger you get, the more ossified you get. Everyone is set in their ways. The incentives are all these terrible short-term incentives of immediate gratification, meeting quarterly targets and so on and so forth. And therefore, thinking in radically different ways is a problem. And it seems to me that the job of the board is to come in and to say that, hey, no, you got to look at the big picture. And I'm going to show you the big picture and ask you questions about that. So what is your experience with advising big companies and being on the board of big companies as far as openness to thinking, visionary leadership, all of that is concerned?
It's limited. It's not a great situation. In India today, the strategy piece tends to be personalized with either a family promoter or a CEO. It's not really institutionalized into a strategy department or the board. So the institution of the board is something that is only barely understood in India today. So I wouldn't say that we're in great shape on this. But if I may just link up my big company experiences against the world of the startup world. In a small company, it is me, myself, and everything is much more flexible, everything is much more malleable, and it has its place. But actually, the commanding heights of the economy are the large firms. Like, you've really got to be big or the rest is irrelevant. The top 20,000 non-financial firms are really pretty much everything about the Indian economy. Everything else is footnotes and trivial small things. So the game is to build big companies. And the essence of big companies is that on one hand, we are gaining economies of scale. We have the ability to put vast resources into subtle refinements of product and process and productivity, which a small company cannot afford. So all the glory of modern capitalism is actually in the large companies. The puzzle is how to make these work, how to get there. So how to first become a large company, because that's really where the returns come. Like, you don't really win by being a small company. You have to become a big company. In India, thumb rules around a big company are 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. This is sort of the range of organizations that we want to think about. It's very difficult to get there. And then how do you create those checks and balances whereby the 10,000 man company will work well? Because by default, it will slide into all the difficulties we're talking about. They'll just day and night sit and do execution. They'll stop thinking about the world. They'll stop being entrepreneurial. They'll stop being strategic. So in a way, the very values that are easy to have when you're a small company tend to go away when you become a bigger company. And that's the puzzle of how do you protect that hunger, that creativity, the strategic thinking, the imagination, the problem solving, while obtaining all the benefits of being a big company.
And my feeling is that everything you say, I agree with entirely, really wise words. And my feeling also is that in 20 years, the landscape itself will change in the sense that I think in the last episode, we referred to this great insight by Naval Ravikant again, where he says that the future will be mainly startups, that you're going to reach a stage where you can have a 10% company that has $1 billion or more in revenue. So it is not necessary then in that context that a big company is a 10,000-person company. What a 10,000-person company today can achieve can possibly be achieved by a 100-person company or even a 10% company way into the future.
I feel that will be in a few industries. In most industries, there's no running away from like vast complex operations.
Yeah, the world is complex and everything is all opposites are true at the same time. So yeah, that's right.
So consider a company like Britannia. It's actually mind-boggling to run factories all over the country, to run warehouses all over the country, to have lakhs of daily touch points at every single retail operation, that a human being goes and smiles and says hello to the shopkeeper, to lakhs of shopkeepers every day. It's mind-blowing, the complexity of that operation.
You're on the board of Britannia, right? Are biscuits healthy?
Some Britannia biscuits are worth eating.
Okay. So I'm going to start this chapter, Ajay Shah, by asking you a question. What is your favorite song by CSNY, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young?
Helpless, Southern Cross.
Helpless is Neil Young.
It's
Solo,
on the
isn't it?
Deja Vu album.
It's on the Deja Vu album.
It's track 4 of Deja Vu.
What about
album.
Teach Your Children?
Teach Your Children is okay. Little cliched. Little Sound of Music character.
I rather like it, but I wanted you to say teach your children. See, we don't script anything. Had we scripted something, I would have said, say teach your children well, because my next piece of advice is choose your founders well, right? And let me explain why this is really important. Who you start a business with is super important. Patrick Collison of Stripe, who of course started with his brother John Collison, himself a genius, said that when you are choosing to start a business with someone, it's actually a feature and not a bug to start with someone you're close to, right? And he, of course, in the video we'll link to, gives examples of many things he started which are exactly like this. And Brian Chesky of Airbnb, gave a great reason for this, where he said that, look, once you start a company, it is so all-consuming that you're going to spend more time with your partner than with your spouse. And therefore, you want to make sure that you choose your partner well, that you get along. And there's a great quote by him that I absolutely love, and I think that is also a key to our relationship, though I hadn't read the quote, but I thought our partnership also, that quote is important. And the quote is, winning an argument is not as important as preserving the relationship. And this is a fantastic piece of wisdom. When I was 10 years younger, 15 years younger, I would have thought, with my male macho ego, that winning an argument is everything. I am right, dikhaunga is score.
Me too.
Right? And today I don't give a shit. Today what matters is the relationship. Because here's the deal, that, and in a sense, you and I are co-founders of Everything is Everything, right? With our amazing team. I would say there are 4 co-founders. But, and the deal is that every day there will be 50 points of friction. And you have to choose what to argue about and what to fight about. And we actually don't have 50 points of friction. We hardly have any, but that's besides the point. But the point is, when you do have a major thing, one of you has to let it go. What is important is that the awesomeness of the relationship overall can sometimes get overwhelmed by some small argument or piece of friction that in the moment seems massive and you're like, oh my God, how can I work with this person? But you've got to see the bigger picture. You've got to think long term. All those things apply. So the way that you choose your founder really matters. And if you want to break it down and if you want to look for qualities, and I must confess that when I started this show, I didn't think about what is Ajay like and look for qualities or enumerate all of that. It was a very vibe thing, that he's a good friend. I really like him. Let's start this. Let me suggest this. And we started. And no doubt that's how you also just said yes immediately. But if you want to enumerate the qualities you're looking for in a co-founder, Naval Ravikant comes up with 3. He says high intelligence, high energy, and high integrity. And he says of these 3, by far the most important is integrity, right? There is no point having someone of high intelligence if they don't have the energy and, they're going to be Bengali about it like me and not do the work. There's no point getting someone of high intelligence and high energy who don't have integrity. because then they could they could cheat you, or they could work at cross purposes, and etc etc. The integrity is the most important thing. You get the integrity and you are absolutely fine. And a final caveat to this point comes from Gary Tan, where he says that one mistake people sometimes make, perhaps looking at Google of the early days, is that let's have co-CEOs, right? That we have a sort of a company and we are both co-founders and we've come in it with equal energy. We might bring different things. Let's be co-CEOs. And he says that actually that's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea because you guys might feel comfortable and really get along well. But think about what happens to the rest of the people who work for you, where every decision takes longer because two people have to sign off and etc etc. So it is useful to have one person who is the CEO, and then you get along well. That's great. You can do your decision making the way you want at the highest level, but there has to be one person who's making the decisions. So
I have two things to add here. One is on how we think about disagreement, arguments, and relationships. What you said is of course correct, meaning people who will get crazy stuck on any one question, it's broken. I mean, there's just something fundamentally wrong if people will get so angry and get tough about any one point. None of the decisions are as black and white as we make them out to be. But the second part of it is that I feel a great relationship is where both people are bringing diverse knowledge to the table and both are Bayesian updating. So it is really great if two different people are not the same. So, a different body of knowledge, a different point of view, differences in how you analyze the world is valuable. So you get two different takes on the same question and each will Bayesian update to the other. So it doesn't even matter which decision you take because both have become stronger out of that conversation. And the purpose of the disagreement actually is to build a model of the world. And yeah, we'll keep getting decisions out. But actually what we're doing is jointly building a theory of the world, a theory of the firm. And in the next iteration, we'll keep getting better decisions out. So I think that's one important thing to think about, that what is really important is respect and Bayesian updation. And the people who are so sure about themselves and who suffer from male tyranny are the guys that won't update, and that's the serious character defect that we have to think about. On the second thing about a single CEO and Google, and I have a personal story that I have observed and that I respect enormously. Again, one story doesn't prove anything, but I just want to narrate this story. There's this wonderful friend Ajay Kaushal of BillDesk. I think you've met him many times at the XKDR office. BillDesk is an extremely successful firm in India. Their big exit to process got snarled up by Indian government delays, but for the rest, it would have been one of the biggest exits of Indian history. And they have a funny model. There are three co-founders. All the three sit in one room together, and all of them discuss all decisions. So they think none of us is good enough to do it alone. So every important thing that comes along, all three will argue about it. And they're just comfortable and happy that none of them wants to be a single CEO. And they say this is a model that has worked well from us. We've done it since we began. When we had no employees, we were three of us in a room. Now we are three of us in a room. We have 10,000 employees. But it's an interesting way to think about it. And again, when you know Ajay Kaushal, you will also see his character. He's just that wonderful, quiet, unassuming, humble person who is interested in the idea and the argument, but will never flaunt his own personal glory in the picture. And that's precisely the kind of culture that takes you to progress.
Ajay's are awesome. I'm not so sure about Shah's or Amit's for that matter. But to kind of get back to the point, no, that's a great story. I think it's an outlier, but it's a great story. But again, the important lesson in this also is that think for yourself. If I say don't have a co-CEO doesn't necessarily mean that's a hard and fast rule. Think for yourself, do first principles thinking, figure out your values, figure out your individual circumstances. But the important thing is think. Don't just get into a groove because that's what everyone does. So.
Well, Amit, carry us further in the story.
We will go further in the song. Teach your children well, choose your founders well, choose your employees well, right? Who you hire is super important. Steve Jobs once said that everything about your company will depend on the first 5 employees. who are the first 5 guys you're getting into your team. And his case was that just hire A-list people, hire the very best people. Like Paul Graham, has had a great analogy to go with this. He said, imagine a rowing team. Imagine that there are rowers. You have a company where everyone is rowing different boats and you have 1,000 people. And you decide that, no, let me get 10 people to row one boat. And you choose 10 people at random to row one boat. And chances are that it won't be great. It'll probably be better than the average boat, but because of incentives and all that, but it won't be great. But he said, what if you just hired the best 10 people and got them to row a boat? It would be orders of magnitude, not orders of magnitude, but it would be much faster than the average boat, and it would just do really well. And Jobs underscores this point. He says that get A-list people, get really good people. And the importance of this, and it's something you alluded to a while back, is that when you get A-list people, what will also then happen is that other A-list people will want to work there. A mistake we often make is that A-list people, the very best people, the higher order thinkers, they are the best. They will obviously go for the best salaries, the best packages. And the answer is no. They will go for what excites them the most. That is why they are A-list people and how they got there in the first place. And they love to work with other A-list people. And also, when you actually have a team of A-list people, they will want to work with other A-list people. They won't want to work with mediocre people. So it becomes a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that you just hire good people, you focus on them, and more good people come, and that becomes a company culture. And this is something that Jobs did for such a long time at Apple, and it is super important. And just as Ravikant spoke about the importance of integrity over intelligence and energy when it comes to choosing your co-founder, Sam Altman has a great quote on choosing your employees, where he says, hire for values first, aptitude second, skills third. Right? Skills, you look at a CV, you get a sense of skills. You do an interview, you ask the person, okay, how do you do this line of code, or how do you do this particular task? And you get a sense of skills, you get a sense of aptitude. But what matters is values. If you get the values right, and I actually have a few chapters on values coming up, but getting values right is super important. So who you hire is really important. Don't just hire someone who can execute a particular task. Hire someone who will think like a co-founder. And in fact, speaking of thinking like a co-founder, our friend Deepak VS has started this great company in Bangalore, which he started it as a solopreneur, in a sense, if I remember correctly. And then he hired a couple of people, a CTO and somebody else. And he loved their commitment and their insights and their passion so much that he made them co-founders. Like he literally just gave them equal shareholding in the company and made them co-founders and said that you are showing as much ownership as I am, so it is only fair that you are co-founders. And whether or not you actually do that, you don't have to do that. There are other ways of rewarding early employees, but the important thing is try and get people as far as possible who has a sense of ownership. Who have a sense of ownership, who are not going through the motions that, oh, Ajay has given me this task, and because all Ajays are good, I must do this task. But instead, oh, this is the purpose of this task. Is there a way to do it better? Shall I suggest this to Ajay? Who take that ownership. Or I think Ajay is wrong. He may be the founder, but I'll tell him he's wrong and we can do it in this way. So who you hire is super important. Don't be scared of hiring people smarter than you. In fact, if you can hire people smarter than you, that's the best freaking thing that you can do. Fill a room with people you can learn from, and you're set for life.
I know you know this, but I just want to say this clearly to you, gentle reader, that when Amit says the best people, the A-list people, he does not mean the credentialed ones. Okay, so don't go around thinking IIT, IIM are the cool ones. Okay, look people in the eyes, and it is their knowledge, it is their character, it is their connection with the world that matters.
Yeah, I of course have no credentials, which is despite that Ajay came with me, so he's living the dream. But Ajay has credentials. He is IIT. He is foreign PhD. So when I got together with him, I said, "कि हाँ credentials है भाई के पास. He'll do a good job." Did he do a good job? Did he? Did he?
Amit, most startup people are only thinking about dollar signs, and you said we should care about values. What are you thinking?
most startup people are not thinking only about dollar signs. I know many startup people. You are in the economic, see policy, wonk kind of person. You use terms like tech bro disparagingly. Yes, of course, in every community, most people are assholes. That's Sturgeon's law. But I know tons of really awesome startup people I have learned from. Some great thinkers. Some of my favorite thinkers of the century, like Paul Graham and Naval Ravikant, are startup people. Peter Thiel. So don't say anything bad about all startup people. Now, I want to talk. So my next point is this: hard work is non-negotiable, right? And this, in a sense, comes down to our disagreement in the last episode about can you be detached, can you give 30% of yourself? And I was vehement in saying that no, if you're running a business, you have to be all in, you have to be 100% there. Obsession is important. The definition of obsession that I like comes from Apurva Mehta of Instacart, where he says that my company is the last thing I think about when I go to sleep at night and the first thing I think about in the morning, right? There's a great anecdote told by Michael Moritz where he speaks about how he was going with Bill Gates to the airport. Bill Gates was dropping him to the airport in his car, and this is in the early days, probably the early 80s, I'm imagining, because, cars and car radios. And he noticed that the spot in the car where there would be a radio, there was nothing. Like it had been yanked out. So he asked Bill Gates that, what happened to your radio? Did someone steal it? And Gates said, no one stole it. I took it out because if I listen to the radio, that'll take away my time for thinking about Microsoft. That's how focused he was. That just think hard about Microsoft all the time. And Gates didn't have a car radio. Jensen Huang doesn't wear a watch. Find me a picture of his where he's wearing a watch. I'm sure you will and post that link, but whatever. He generally doesn't wear a watch. In the video, we're going to show you he's not wearing a watch. And he's saying why he doesn't wear a watch. He says, because now is the most important time. I'm consumed at every moment with what I am doing. That has my full attention. That has my full energy. That is all that I care about, right? And he's making a larger point. Our point about long-term thinking is something that actually he embodies more than anyone else I can think of. But at the same time, it is all about that when you are working on something, be in the moment, obsessively focus on that. Many people will often talk about work-life balance and they'll talk about burnout and they'll say, oh, but you can't drive yourself like this and what will happen. And first of all, I'd like to say that people always have to make their own lifestyle choices, but the path to excellence always comes with hard work. That's non-negotiable. You're not going to get to excellence in any way without working damn hard. Maybe once you get to excellence, you've got a mastery, you can then chill a little bit about it, but you get to mastery only through very hard work. And Sam Altman makes a really important point. He says that actually hard work doesn't burn you out. Momentum is energizing. You work, you gain momentum, that energizes you, it fills you up, you work harder. That is not the problem. Burnout doesn't come from working too hard. I think it's more likely that burnout probably comes from things like worrying too much, or procrastinating too much, or overthinking it. It doesn't come from working too hard. If you're just going out there and you're doing it again and again, it's completely fine. Jeff Bezos says that he doesn't believe in the term work-life balance. It makes no sense. He says he believes in the term work-life harmony. What gives you energy? Sometimes something in your personal life may give you energy. Sometimes your work gives you energy. You go where there is energy. Hard work doesn't mean that you work 24 hours a day or 18 hours a day or whatever. You find what gives you energy, and you will generally find that work gives you energy in a good way. Your personal life can give you energy in a good ways. You can mark those boundaries out. But the important thing is that somehow it's become fashionable these days to sometimes, disdain hard work. Right? When our man, what's his name, Narayan Murthy speaks of 70 hours a week, or was it 100 hours a week, or whatever, 70 hours a week. My thing to that is that if it's mandatory, I completely disapprove of that. But voluntarily, I am someone who, if I want to learn something, if I want to do something, I will put in more than 70 hours a week. What is 70 hours? Every hour of my week when I'm not sleeping could be towards that, because that is how obsessive I am. And that's a good thing. If Jensen Huang has another great video where he says greatness involves suffering. He says that, there are people who think that every moment of the time that you spend at work should be joyful. And he's saying it's not like that with me. Every day it doesn't fill me with joy. Every year I don't end the year filled with joy. All the little mundane things I have to do for my work, they don't fill me with joy. I don't feel joy towards my company, but I feel love. Every moment I feel love towards my company, I feel love towards my mission, I feel love towards what I am building. And when you feel that love, you will automatically work hard. and it does involve suffering and it does involve sacrifices. And I'm not saying everyone should suffer and work 70-hour weeks, but you make your choices. If you're building a business, it'll only work if you put in the work, right? And if you are an employee and you want to coast, that's a lifestyle choice you have made. Though, I would say that even then, everything you do, you should kind of aim for excellence. And in an orthogonal context, when it comes to working hard, there's something that Naval Ravikant again says, which ties in with stuff that we've also been teaching in life lessons, right? We talk in our course life lessons about understanding the way that we are wired. We were hardwired in a particular way in the hunter-gatherer age. That hardwiring is out of sync with modern times. So we have to consider our hardwiring. What is good about our hardwiring, we have to amplify it. What is bad about it, we have to mitigate it. And we also have to learn that sometimes you can't fight too hard. Right? And Naval Ravikant has this great quote where he doesn't refer to any of this evolution stuff, but he says, work like a lion. And here's his point. His point is that a lion is not working office hours. A lion is not going to hunt 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. It's not doing any of that. It is sleeping 18 hours. It is chilling most of the time. Then it puts in a furious sprint. It catches its prey and it has the prey. And that's fine. That works for the lion. It works for some people. So I have realized after much agitation that that's actually how I work. It has long been a lament of mine that in Eisenhower's quadrant, which you're looking at the screen right now, I am either in the quadrant which is not important, not urgent, or I'm in the quadrant which is important and urgent. Because if there's a deadline, episode to release, episode to shoot, you gotta get the job done. Where I would like to be is an important and not urgent, which is where all the learning happens. Reading a book is important but not urgent. Learning something new, learning to play the guitar, for example. There are so many things in life which are important but not urgent, and to me they are all the important things. And I have been beating myself up for a long time thinking that, hey, I need to have the discipline to sit down and do those things. It is not only urgency that should make me act. Tim Urban has a great post on this, we'll link from the show notes, where he speaks of exactly the same dilemma as me. He has a term for it also, which I've forgotten. But now, reading Naval Ravikant's quote about the lion told me that it's actually understandable, because I feel humans are also hardwired like that, because we were after all shaped in the hunter-gatherer age, where we are not working 8-hour days at an office, where we're not working 5 days a week, where when we need to, when the opportunity is right, we go out and hunt, and the rest of the time we are saving cognitive energy. And that is why we get distracted so easily, because focusing hard on something consumes calories. So it is natural for us, it is efficient for us, it is rational for us to get distracted, because we save the calories for the hunt. And that's just how we are wired. There's no right or wrong about it. There's no moral value to this. But understanding how we are wired can help us mitigate that. So I'd say that if your approach to work is that, hey, you are also sprinting a lot when there's something to be done, but otherwise you find it hard to build habits and all that, you got to make the effort anyway and try and build those habits, or I do. Or build in hacks that make the important and not urgent into important but urgent, like calendarizing them. And we've discussed this on other episodes. This was just an orthogonal point when it comes to work, that I think hard work is super important, but how do we structure the hard work? How do we make ourselves do it? How do we understand the forces within us that stop us from working as hard as we would like? I think all of this is important to think about.
Amit, what do we know about the problem of the values of the founders versus the values of the organization?
That's a great question, because once you build an organization, you want it to have a set of values that you vibe with, which makes sense to you. And as organizations grow bigger and bigger, it becomes harder and harder. And again, there is someone who's built an organization which is super big in terms of employees, who lays down a certain set of principles around this, and that's Jeff Bezos. And Jeff Bezos says, and this is going to be my advice as well, optimize for truth telling. What is the point that he is making? The point that he is making is that human beings are social animals. Let's go back to evolution and natural selection. How have we evolved? We've evolved to get along with each other, right? We've not evolved to tell the truth. Telling the truth can sometimes be counterproductive to us. A truth teller could get clubbed to death in a tribe. So we've evolved to get along, to function well in social circumstances. And what Bezos says is that this instinct often percolates down an organization in a very natural way because we are all hardwired for this. And then there is not enough truth telling. It might be you don't tell the truth up the line because hierarchy is such a big deal for you. Again, something that we are hardwired to take seriously. Or you don't tell the truth about something to your fellow workers because you want to get along, you want to be the friendly guy, etc., etc. And Bezos's point is that no, you have to build mechanisms and you have to build a culture of truth telling. Otherwise, a company can go to hell. And there are many practices and frameworks with which this can happen. Like in his interview with Lex Fridman, Bezos talks about the policy of disagree but commit. And this goes back to something you said earlier when you were speaking about disagreements, where he will often say that, I might be talking with someone who is many levels below me, and I might disagree, and I might have an argument, but I might at some point say, well, we will agree to disagree. I will continue disagreeing with you, but I will commit. We will do what you said. So I will disagree and I will commit. And once that decision is taken, I am not going to come back to you and say, I told you so, or that went wrong, or whatever. I'm going to commit to it. We are on the same team. It is my decision. I have ownership of the decision as much as you do, and I'm not going to beat you up over it. So, that's just one sort of little practice that really matters. And it's important to build this within a company because the truth is important. That we need to be able to tell the truth to each other, and valuing that really matters. And I saw a recent example of this. I will often do this thing where I will go on YouTube and I will watch videos of luxury resorts and business class and first class in flights. It's something many people do because these channels are really powerful. So there's a guy called Non-Stop Dan. Right? Non-Stop Dan travels business class all year. That's his day job. He pays for it himself. He travels business class and first class around the world, and he makes videos on it, which are super popular. And he is super credible for me. Like the 2 times in my life that I've done international business class travel, I looked at Non-Stop Dan's videos, chose my airline accordingly, and got exactly the experience he spoke about with all the pros and cons. So I love the guy. 2 days back, he posted this video about Air India. So he begins by saying how the new Air India business class is absolutely awesome, talks about why the walls are higher, there's more privacy, you can close your door, etc., etc. Then he gets to the food. He'd ordered some special meal package for himself. I think it was a vegan meal. So these people obviously didn't get that special meal on board for him. But when they gave him his first meal, they said, sir, this is it. This is a vegan meal. And then he's looking at the ingredients and he's saying, no, this is cheese and this is this and this is that. And they're saying, no, sir, this is a special meal. And then he looks out and he points out that this is actually what is on the menu. It's a normal thing you're giving to everyone. This cannot be what I asked for. And they say yes. And then when he keeps arguing, she says, okay, I'll call my superior. And superior comes and he says something and they just don't even know what's going on over there. And the same thing happens in the second meal. And Non-Stop Dan, quite correctly, is furious about this. He will say, this is so dangerous. You forget my meal preference. Vegan, vegetarian, whatever. You and I are no fan of vegans, Ajay Shah. But he's saying, you forget my meal preference. What if I had a food allergy? What if I said I'm allergic to peanuts and there were peanuts in something? And not only did these people not know it, they lied to me about it. I think the best practice here for the Air India person is to say, sir, I apologize deeply. We forgot to take your meal on board. We are so sorry for this. We will make it up to you. This is a list of things we have. What do you think fits you here? Let me also go to economy class and first class and see what the meals there are. I'm deeply sorry, we'll make it up to you, and figure out a way for customer service after the flight to give him a refund or give him free points or to make it up. That's the right way to approach it. The wrong way to approach it completely is to actually lie about it and say, theek hai. And this is a tendency that I've actually seen belabors Indian firms a lot. Or, you ask someone on the street for directions. It's part of our culture. You ask someone on the street for directions. Even if they don't know, they'll say, हाँ, वो सीधा जाइए, right जाइए, left जाइए, वहाँ पान वाला है, उसको पूछिए, or whatever. Not the last part. But people pretend to know when they don't know. And it is important for the world to function efficiently for truth to be a matter. Now, people can often accuse you and me of, being autism spectrum people. No one's ever accused me of that, but I think that sometimes comes at you. Of being autism spectrum people, they don't get social nicety. Sometimes you have to lie. Yes, sometimes you have to be diplomatic. If your lady love says, am I looking fat in this dress? Ajay Shah, there is only one answer. but truth also matters, and we have to, not overbalance on one side. And I think that insight that we are social animals and not truth-telling animals is such a powerful insight and something to think about.
I want to link this up to the theory of the firm. We have an episode on imperial versus decentralized firms. The crisis of firms is information. Okay, there is information about users, there is information about production. In large firms, that information does not bubble up correctly. In large firms, you get the imperial illusion that I've got one idea, I've got one global production process, and I'm going to ram this down everywhere. And the firm that pushes from the top, and very often there is a top that is thrilled to bits that, wow, 12 people, we made $1 billion firm, we're so smart, and we've got the one right answer for the whole world. And then the firm stops having those information flows. So this is an absolutely deep idea, that how to produce better. Why are we low productivity compared to what we can be? How to serve customers better. In this locale, this kind of customer wants that kind of product. Or in this locale, here is the best way in which we should produce this. Or in an infinite segmentation of customers, what could I do better for this kind of customer in Bombay? A lot of this information is there inside the firm, but the imperium that firms build inside themselves hinders those information flows.
And in fact, most big companies eventually, when they fail because of this. Like Kodak had digital photography within the company, embedded within, and they didn't do anything with it. And you imagine part of the reason is, of course, the incentives, that you've got a huge market of doing one particular thing, you keep doing that, and why take your eyes off that, and etc. etc. And plus, each silo within a company has its own interest. But there is also a case of the culture of truth telling not percolating enough. If everyone is able to fearlessly say what they want, even to the CEO, even to someone 8 levels above you who is wonder of wonders accessible, then I think a lot of these problems kind of get solved. And we see this in modern companies like Netflix in India, for example, is run so incredibly badly. Despite, we've spoken about Netflix in a past episode, how much I admired the company in their first 10 years, all the great things they did. But it became a big company, became ossified. A similar thing with Nike. I've loved that company for most of its existence, but then they went overboard in terms of wokeness and posturing over the last few years, and has really affected the brand badly and its sales. So all of these things, I think, happen because there isn't that culture where you can say what the hell you want and you can just kind of speak your mind, and there are no consequences for going, in a direction that is not approved.
Amit, what else lies in the values problem?
The next value I want to talk about is really not a people value per se. Though people can embrace this value, but it's not a people value in terms of integrity, courage, honesty, all of those things. But it's a value, it's almost an aesthetic and functional value. And that is embrace simplicity. That's my advice. And this is super important. There's this great video by Vlad Tenev of Robinhood where he says, one screen, one button, one action. Too many people, when they're designing a product, they throw in the kitchen sink. There'll be all the features will be there that they think are good features. Every good idea that somebody had will be there. And his point is, no, just keep it simple. One screen, one button, one action. This is something that, simplicity was also at the core of Stripe's rise. We spoke about Stripe's great vision, which was increase the GDP of the internet. So when they started, if, e-commerce was taking off, if you wanted to set up PayPal, it would take 7 days to actually integrate PayPal with your website. And there was a 100-page manual you had to go through. So you could literally, you'd have to hire a team of people, or, put people in your company dedicated to this, to setting it up and running it. And it was just a mess. And Stripe said, let's do one button. Like when I set up Stripe, or when I set up the payment systems for any of our courses, or and so on, and even PayPal obviously adjusted later with time. It was really simple. You take a little piece of embed code, you put it on your web page, and then it just shows, and you test it once, and it is done in 5 minutes. 5 minutes is what it takes, right? And the idea is simplicity. So if you read about how Stripe went about building this product in its early days, what they essentially did was that they cut down features. They cut down every unnecessary feature. When you were, as a company, when you were setting up the payments gateway, they cut down every unnecessary process. They stripped everything down to the barest essential, and it worked. As an example of this, look at the 3 things on the screen right now. These are the Raptor engines of SpaceX, and this is how they evolved. Here's Raptor 1, Raptor 2, and Raptor 3. Right? And Raptor 1 was once described as a Christmas tree. It is so madly complicated. Raptor 2, much better. Raptor 3, when it came out, people thought it's a joke. People thought it's a toy, it's some kind of model. Like, despite being some 30% lighter, it was 51% more efficient or had more power from what I remember. And the evolution, therefore, is not from simple to complicated, which often happens in big companies which are, losing control of those processes. The evolution to greatness is always an evolution towards simplicity. You start with complex and you strip it down, strip it down, strip it down, get more and more simple. And if you really get simple, you have, if you get it right, you have no need to change it, right? This is a particular pen you will recognize in 1955. This is the same pen today. It's the exact same design. Once you nail it, you don't need to change anything about it. This is Pablo Picasso. We spoke about him in our episode on art. These are his bulls. See the evolution of his bulls. This is the last one, right? It is so beautiful, so powerful. You just capture the entire essence of it. And it's not just simplicity, it is beauty, because beauty and simplicity go hand in hand. You know, Patrick Collison again in this video here talks about how people like beautiful things. This was all of Steve Jobs' philosophy. Just make it beautiful. You know, at a philosophical level, I hated Apple for many years for a bunch of reasons. That it's a closed off walled garden, that there isn't enough value in it, it is way too expensive. I think once Windows had reached a certain stage, I could see no reason why somebody would buy Windows over Apple. But their whole thing was, their whole aesthetic was that beauty has a value of its own, simplicity has a value of its own. Today, of course, I use a MacBook and an iPad and so on. And I completely get the value of that. And many other companies have internalized that beauty and simplicity go hand in hand. And sometimes you can't quantify it easily, but it is something worth aiming for, because if you aim for something beautiful, that alone will make you smile when you see what you have created, and that alone will inspire you to go further and further.
Yes, Amit, carry us further.
So my penultimate piece of advice is have professional pride. These are Jeff Bezos' words, not mine. And Bezos' point is this. His point is that for most people working within a company, whether it's your own company or somebody else's, 99% of what you do will never be seen by anyone. It's something that you're doing behind the scenes. You're formatting a piece of code, or whatever. You're writing an instruction manual for the engineer who will write the final instruction manual, or whatever. 99% of what you do will never be seen by anyone. It will never be seen by the consumer, etc., etc. But have pride in it. I have one quote I love, which I've shared on the show, which in fact I learned from our friend Deepak VS in our Seen Unseen episode together. How you do the small things is how you do the big things. That really drives me in a lot of what I do. I try to live up to that. I'm sure I do many small things badly. I'm sure I do many big things not as well as I would like. But if you get into a habit of bringing a certain commitment, a certain desire for excellence to every little thing that you do, then it becomes internalized to you, that drive, and it percolates into the big things you do as well. And the big things really happen over time. There's no moment in time where you're doing something big and you say, it's a big thing. It's an accumulation of habits and an accumulation of many, many small things. How you do the small things is how you do the big things. So I love this, this message of Bezos, that be proud about what you do. That if I make tea for my colleagues, I am proud of making the best tea. Last night I made bacon and sourdough bread for our crew, Namsita and Vaishnav. It was bloody good. Ajay Shah, it was the best bacon and sourdough ever made in these climes in which we record. Right? I made it. I'm proud of that. I don't care that it's a small thing. Who cares about that? No, you gotta have pride in it. Right? So I think that's a huge thing. And and these feed into each other. If you love what you do, you will do it well enough to have pride in it. And if what you do makes you proud, you will love it all the more. It's a feedback loop. It's a virtuous cycle. And I love that.
Our friend Rajesh Chen has always described the objective of character as being personal humility and professional pride. That we should be humble and self-effacing as people, as human beings. But in our works, we should put our everything, we should stand by our works, and we should lay claim that, this was done well.
Beautiful words. Okay, so my final point actually carries on from what you just said, which is a point that comes from Warren Buffett, and it is be guided by your inner scorecard. Right, there's a great video where Gates and Buffett are talking, and Buffett was asked by the audience of one big lesson that I don't remember what the exact question was, a big lesson he's learned in his life or from his father or whatever, but he learned this particular lesson from his father. And he said the lesson his father taught him was throughout your life, be guided by your inner scorecard, not your outer scorecard. An outer scorecard will depend on things like how much money have I made, how successful I am, what does the world think of me, what are people writing about me, all of that shit, right? Your inner scorecard is your own sense of values, which of course you have to build and cultivate and whatever, that where does your sense of purpose come from? What is a long game that you're playing because you have that sense of purpose? What are the values you inculcate within yourself and by extension within your company? Because that is the long game you're playing, and this is a purpose which drives you. It's that package, and that package determines your inner scorecard, and you judge yourself according to that. So an outer scorecard might have a point like wealth or balance sheet factors will play into that, whereas an inner scorecard will have things like integrity. Was I true to my values? Could I tell the truth to my friends when they needed to hear the truth? Did I go down the paths that I wanted to go down on, or was I swayed too much by the world? And so on and so forth. So to me, this is a great piece of advice for life, not just for a business that you might start. That be driven by your inner scorecard, and it'll be fine. If you don't score high on your inner scorecard, nothing is worth it. Ajay, we are done with the episode, but we're not done with the episode. Recommendations, please.
Directly flowing from what you just said, How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. It's a beautiful, simple book. Everybody should read it.
And I could actually give a whole massive list of business books and startup books and all that, but I'll just give two resources to end the episode. One is, again, I think Startup Archive is great. Their Insta page is great, where I picked up a lot of this wisdom. They collate interviews of a lot of these fine thinkers, and I say fine thinkers for a reason, because I feel that in the incentives in the modern world being the way they are, that if you look at two purposes that people may have. One is making a lot of money, and two is changing the world. Both of them are today possible to do through business, right? When you build a successful business, the only way it can be successful is by providing value to people, by making individuals better off, and eventually at scale making society better off. The great companies do that, and it is something that animates a lot of fine thinkers. So I think a lot of our greatest thinkers have actually emerged out of the world of business, which may not be politically correct to say, and I'm like a literature student, I'm an arty-farty guy, so it's a bit surprising. It would be surprising for the 20-year-old me to hear these words coming now, but I really feel some of our finest thinkers are from the world of business. So my second recommendation is Paul Graham's essays. I've recommended them before, but they are outstanding. They are models of how you write an essay, how you think about a particular subject. Like, he takes a couple of months over each essay, sends it to friends, gets their feedback, crafts it beautifully. The language is always simple and elegant, an absolute model of clear writing. And in terms of just introducing me to new frameworks of thinking about the world, thinking about life, thinking about humanity, not just business, it's an invaluable resource. So, gentle readers, do check that out, and also do think seriously about starting something of your own, following your heart, following your passions. Watch these two episodes again, send them to all your friends, like, subscribe, and whatever else you're supposed to say. Did I just say I will never do marketing? I will never do marketing. Don't bother. Yeah.